We are going to start just by talking about the Democrats' new darling, one Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney's latest fans, Democratic donors. Despite policy disagreements, donors like Jeffrey Katzenberg are backing the Wyoming Republican in a primary, obviously now, because of her role on the House committee investigating the January 6th attack. As one of the nation's biggest Democratic donors, the film producer Jeffrey Katzenberg helped make Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton into Hollywood darlings. But this year, he's backing a surprise candidate, Representative Liz Cheney, the staunchly conservative Wyoming Republican. "We agree on little, if anything," Mr. Katzenberg said in an interview, "but she has done something that very, very few people in history have done, which is she's put her country over party and politics to stand in defense of our Constitution." He was referring to Ms. Cheney's leadership role on the House committee investigating the January 6, 2021 attack on the Capitol and her condemnation of former President Donald J. Trump, whom she has called, quote, "a domestic threat that we have never faced before." To help Ms. Cheney bolster her chances in Wyoming's upcoming Republican primary, she is facing a Trump-backed opponent. Mr. Katzenberg and his wife have donated more than $43,000 to her campaign and groups supporting her. Mr. Katzenberg said his contributions went beyond that sum but declined to provide further details, saying only that he was talking up Ms. Cheney, the vice chairwoman of the January 6th committee, to, quote, "anybody and everybody that will listen to me with any party affiliation." All right. Then I'll skip ahead here. Most Democratic donors are profoundly out of step with Ms. Cheney on many issues. I skipped over that paragraph. She voted with Donald Trump 93% of the time, as it mentions earlier. Yeah. But the Democrats supporting her say they have been impressed by her courage in opposing the former president, whom she voted to impeach after the January 6th attack, and standing up for the peaceful transfer of power. Just two more quick paragraphs here. "Cheney is the most important politician in America right now," said Dimitri Melhorn, a political strategist who advises the LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, a major Democratic donor whom Melhorn had said quietly begun supporting Ms. Cheney. The billionaire hedge fund manager Seth Klarman, an independent with liberal views on social policies, who has given to Ms. Cheney's campaign in recent months, said in an email to potential donors that the Congresswoman was perhaps the strongest voice in the Republican Party speaking out about the importance of upholding the Constitution. I just think it's funny to add up the net worths of everybody who insists that Liz Cheney's policy positions don't really matter, right? I mean, just what an incredibly privileged position that is.
Yes. That's really what it comes down to. None of these people really are going to be affected by policy. So they can afford their fine-minded principles about the Constitution. They can afford. And as you said in your article, Reich should know better.
I refer to my article to Robert Reich, who wrote an article floating her for president in 2024, and one of the quotes in there was that we're in a moment in which support for democracy, as he puts it, transcends the specific policies of specific candidates. I mean, what like I said, it transcends if you have no skin in the game, if you have nothing to lose, if you're not going to be on the receiving end of any of the horrible policies that she's advocating for, including, gutting the ACA, defunding healthcare centers that provide reproductive care. I mean, these are just a couple.
Did you see
opposing background checks on gun sales. I mean, you can go down the list.
The libs got a little miffed that she tweeted support of the Supreme Court decision. They got a little miffed for a minute. Their crush on Liz came smacked into the brick wall of reality. But right. They buried that pretty quick. This came out after that. They buried that within days and lined up behind Cheney. Yeah.
She supports domestic drilling on protected lands. She's against citizenship for DACA recipients. She was against aid to the U.S.-Mexico border. She was against the first impeachment of Donald Trump. She supported Trump during the first impeachment, which was about, I thought it was kind of bullshit, honestly, but it was about, at least in theory, his attack on the democratic process by pressuring a foreign government into investigating the family of the guy he was probably going to run against. So if she's such a champion for democracy, why didn't she have a problem that time?
Yeah. It feels like the further down the road we go, the elite class, the Washington chattering class, the professional political class, the professional donor class, they're just losing everybody. The people that they're speaking to are just becoming an increasingly rarefied bunch. With their behavior around Roe, they've even lost their white feminists, a good portion of them, which was a huge number of the people who were the most outwardly, vocally blue, no matter who.
Yeah,
like, those
Deborah
were really.
Messing.
Right.
It broke on CNN
when
last
you've
week.
lost Deborah Messing as the Democratic Party, who have you not lost from that camp?
Right. I mean, she is like an Alyssa Milano.
Next, you're going to have Sarah Jessica Parker, advocating for Bernie Sanders.
Well, Messing was on a call. I mean, CNN reported this. We should have been on top of this. We weren't because we're fuck ups. But a responsible YouTube channel would have blasted this out. We could have done well with this. CNN put out a piece detailing how, Hollywood people, including Messing herself, were on a call with the White House. And Messing says something to the effect of, we already voted. Why are we even having this call? Why are you asking us for anything? We put you guys in power. Now do something, right?
We're supposed to be back at brunch now.
Right. We're supposed to be back in brunch now. Exactly. And so when she's giving you shit like that, yeah, that's a very bad sign. That's a very bad sign. But the thing that's so embarrassing about this Liz Cheney thing, I mean, maybe my headline for my article.
And that's I think that's where Reich is coming from, because look, in the end, yeah, he's more progressive. He recognizes the problem better than a lot of his peers do. Recognizes that eventually the guillotines are going to come if we don't do something about this. He gets all that. But in the end, look, I mean, he's a Washington guy. He's part of the chattering class.
He was Bill Clinton's labor secretary. I mean, he's not exactly an enemy of the liberal establishment. Just because he postures further left than they do doesn't mean, he doesn't go to these cocktail parties.
Right. So in the end, he's susceptible to their brainworms.
Right. Exactly. He's not completely out of the hive mind there. But the other thing I found just obscene about his article, and here, I'll just read a quote from it right now. Cheney is a firm conservative, and I have opposed many of her positions. But we are at an inflection point in this nation over a set of principles that transcend, in italics, any particular positions or policies. If we cannot agree on the sanctity of the Constitution and the rule of law, we are no longer capable of self-government. The real battle in 2024 will not be between Democrats and Republicans. It will be between forces supporting democracy in America and those supporting authoritarianism. Now, aside from this contention that we're at an inflection point over a set of principles that transcend positions or transcend policies, aside from that being just a reflection of his own privilege, that is just a very narrow-minded view of what democracy actually is. He's referring to democracy as the electoral process, which is basically a charade, is basically a dog and pony show to give us the illusion of actual democracy. But democracy, as it is broadly defined, which is most relevant to this conversation, is rule by the majority. Rule of any group or organization or institution or society by a majority of its members. And so this is where policy becomes very important, because if women do not have bodily autonomy, then you don't have a democracy. Right. If the labor force has been relegated to serfdom, you don't have a democracy. If 90% of people want background checks for gun sales, but we can't get them because the government's been bought off by arms dealers, then we don't have a democracy. So you are not pro-democracy if you take these extreme right-wing positions that Liz Cheney holds, 93% of which are shared by Donald Trump. It's just a ludicrous argument. Absolutely ludicrous.
They had elections in the Soviet Union.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
So what does that mean? Yeah. They got to vote. So was it a free society? When your choices are, you can vote for Comrade Dmitry.
Right.
He is for extra bread ration. Or you can vote for Comrade Ivan. He is for extra grain.
Right.
What the hell? I mean, that's what we have, basically. I mean, it's you have these slight differences between the people that ultimately you're allowed to vote for. If somebody like Bernie Sanders comes along, they make sure you can't vote for him when it counts. They make sure he'll never get in a position of any real power.
Right.
So
That's when democracy breaks down all of a sudden. All of a sudden, we can't find the votes. We have this app. We're supposed to have votes here. Oh, where are they? There must be something wrong.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, at that point, it's been a very long time since we've had a democracy. Whenever I watch the election night coverage, I always feel like that should be the only subject of the coverage. The only subject should be the fact that the whole way that the system is set up is so anti-democratic that the ritual is a farce. Just the gerrymandering alone. They should just be talking about that. They should be like, yes, well, they got this many seats in Congress, but with this caveat, the whole map is gerrymandered. Like, what are we even talking about here? Yeah, even at the most basic level, democracy is broken down, and I see that again and again in the polling. The idea of democracy is the wisdom of crowds. That's the core theory of democracy, that the people collectively have good judgment. And if you look at the polling, that holds up. Look at the recent polling about the total collapse of faith in institutions. People aren't stupid. They get it. They have, what, 7% approval of Congress. They have something like 14% approval of the media, of television news. I think it's slightly higher for newspapers, something like 16%. They don't trust the Supreme Court. I think that's in the 20s or something. They get it. They get it. They understand it. They are not allowed to express that disdain with their voting. That is why you have such a disconnect between our government and the people. The system has been so rigged at this point that the wisdom of crowds, that is the key component of democracy, is not able to manifest in the government that we actually have. That is why the system is falling apart. It's not the people, it's the rigging.
Yeah, I had a very similar thought this afternoon, just spontaneously. Like, it becomes a self-fulfilling thing where the more and more the system becomes rigged at the top, the more and more everyone who does not benefit from the system as it is check out, to the point where the voting public, the voters, are the people who basically buy into the system because they're getting something back out of it. And I put this in my piece also. It's almost like, and many of the people who I'm talking about are the Dems who are now, flooding Liz Cheney's campaign coffers, right? Because they're very invested in maintaining this electoral charade that gets run every 2 and 4 years at the national
because
level.
For them, they can afford to just vote based on what makes them feel good.
Well, that's what I was sort of getting at in the last paragraph of the piece. I just sort of posited
voting is like being a fan of a pop star.
Well, exactly, and I just sort of posited the theory that, hey, maybe somewhere in these people's minds, they actually long for the day when the difference between Democrats and Republicans was pretty much nothing. Like, maybe they liked it back then. They liked it back when these elections didn't matter that much, when this was all just a very, low-stakes parlor game that just took place in their own little club, inside their own, little corners of the country. And, I mean, you try to win. You'd like to win. That would be nice. But, hey, whatever. I mean, if Romney beats Obama, not the end of the world, right? Bush beats Kerry. All right, not the end of the world. Whereas Trump just raises the stakes in their minds to a point where they just can't have it, which is why any opposition to him, no matter from the left or the right, now I would actually argue these mainstream liberals have been much warmer to right-wing criticism of Trump. They love the Lincoln Project people a lot more than they like us, I guarantee you that.
Yeah, no, I mean, they have more in common with Liz Cheney than they do with Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar might as well be from fucking Mars for these people.
Oh, by the way, remember when Donald Trump led those send her back chants, right, and whatever it was, 2019, and the House voted to condemn that as a racist attack? Guess what Liz Cheney voted? No, I don't condemn that. Right?
Yeah, I mean they don't care. Like all of their pretenses about democracy and constitutionality and America, they don't give a shit about any of that. It's like it's a increasingly it's just an effete aristocracy talking to itself with the illusion that they have the public's ear. And increasingly that's just not the case.
Please clap.